Could see. Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre, hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode, we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond, sometimes even from the beyond. You can find us on YouTube at Terror in Tandem, on Instagram at Terror in Tandem, and you'll always find our latest episode on our website, terrorintandem.com.
And whenever you're listening to this, right now, is where you can get us.
Yeah, you can get us.
So good for you. Welcome, everyone.
Everybody can get us.
Welcome to Terror in Tandem. Oh, God, my hip.
That's not untrue.
I know. It's like 2 years away from no longer being a parody.
Yeah. I just turned a very major milestone.
30.
I turned a major milestone of a modern gentleman.
Nice. Those are the lyrics.
No. Do
you think it's modern? What did you say? Modern gentleman?
Modern major gentleman. It's not major gentleman.
It's major general.
Oh,
but
close enough.
Major gentleman. I mean, that guy.
Yeah, I think they should be called major gentlemen.
But also, what if there's like a civilian army equivalent of like the major gentleman and the major first lady?
The first lady. Why can't she be gentle woman or?
Oh, have you not been paying attention to politics lately?
Oh,
right.
I'm not just paying attention to that, but also
so you still want to know why?
Aging, which is what our episode topic of today is
one
about,
horror at a time.
Is very, very skewed to the female aging as the problem.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oh.
So.
Oh, shit.
If you think about it.
I just thought that all three of my examples to talk about today are.
Yeah, it's all of them. Most of them are. And we'll talk about it in depth.
Man, that flew right over me.
Why don't we kind of explore a little bit about our topic?
Well, we're talking about the human body getting older, which is
gonna happen.
Yeah, listen, you should be so lucky, right? Like we all want to get old and we all want to not die, but it's also terrible.
Well, we want to stay alive. It's not that we all want to get old. Nobody wants to get old.
True.
That's the point.
True. Yeah, I mean,
nobody wants to get old in the sense where they feel old.
That's the thing. Like every time they start talking about life expectancy and like, life extending drugs, I'm like, yeah, but it's like, what do you get? An extra couple years being 90? Like
and then what do you have to do to get that?
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. Like privation and not having fun when you're young so that you can be old longer.
And they're not going to give it to plebes like us.
No, shit. Yeah.
So that's the other thing too.
I mean, from our many luxury properties, we will be insulated from the aging process and the blood transfusions we get from our young relatives.
Real extensive, probably, I don't know, more scientific anti-aging techniques is really reserved for
like that weird mannequin guy who gets blood transfusions.
Oh, I'm going to talk about him.
Oh, fuck yeah, he's so weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, aging, right? That's
so it's a biological fate.
It happens to all of us,
Your cells age.
We know from a very young age that is our future. I mean, and from a young age, I think we kind of develop a sort of apprehension about it. But
I think from a very young age, we are so in a rush to be older. We want to accelerate the aging process in the way where we can be older and make decisions. And then when you get to that point, all you want to do is slow it down.
I guess I was speaking more specifically about when you're super young, like just a little kid, and you encounter somebody who is like absurdly old, and it is pretty scary. Like, they're super wrinkly, they smell weird, and they say weird shit. And when they kiss you, like when great grandma kisses you and you feel like the mustache stubble biting into your neck, and it's like, Jesus Christ.
I don't. I mean, that's definitely a you take.
Hey,
used to love looking at my grandparents' wrinkly face and wrinkly hands because it was so much story there, so much life lived.
As we're going to get into, as we progress through this episode, there's a term that my co-host is going to introduce to you that it turns out I have a lot of.
And I'm going to introduce it right now. It's called gerontophobia.
Yes. Okay, quick asterisk. I'm going to be a little brutal in this episode. It's not ageist.
That asterisk to this entire podcast effort.
True. But specifically, I'm going to talk about aging in what may seem like a pretty unsympathetic way. But I want to fully acknowledge that we all get old. I will too. I will get old, hopefully, and my body will start to be, gross and fall apart as well. The process has already begun. So I don't want anybody to be like, he's got this battle, because we're all going there. We can fucking talk about it.
I also think that what definition of what old is changes as we age.
I guess.
When you're a kid, you think 30-year-olds are old.
That's for sure. Yeah. Anybody.
When you're 30, you're like, no, 70-years-olds are old.
I'm convinced
but then
that
when you're 50, you're like, no, 90-year-olds are old.
Like, until you basically graduate from college, you just assume anyone older than 30 is 50.
Yeah.
So, like, everyone's just 50. Everyone is that middle, beautiful, unless they're super old or your age.
I also think that, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's SPF, drinking more water, being more conscious of
antibiotics,
anti-aging, products and things like that. But the actors who were cast in The Golden Girls were 50 years old.
I know that. I mean,
and they were made to look like they were in their late 60s and 70s. So I'm going to talk about gerontophobia, which is an irrational or disproportionate fear of old age, especially of growing old. It's also a fear of or disdain for or an aversion to old people.
Wow, you're really staring at me.
You're sitting right across from me.
But you the first part of that you were reading, and then the second part you seem to have memorized and stared straight at me.
Well,
as you
that's
said all
because
of it.
You said that I'm going to kind of expose you as a gerontophobiast.
Sure, I am, for sure. I'm not afraid of myself getting old. Like I said, I hope it happens one day. I am.
Yeah, definition
very
part
much,
2.
Yes. Ooh.
Disdain for, aversion to.
I was going to say, I push back on the irrational part of it. I think it's quite rational.
I think also you've watched some old people die.
I have. I mean, usually I'm standing at the top of the stairs looking at the bottom and like trying to suppress laughter. But you're right. No, listen, like in my life, I grew up.
Admission of guilt is purely speculative on this podcast and cannot be used in any court of law.
Exactly. You hear that, everyone? So I grew up in a multi-generational house. I grew up in a big Italian-American family, and I really loved the old people of my childhood. Like I grew up with them. I cherished them, my great-grandparents, my grandparents. And then something happened. A different generation became dominant and became old, and their attitudes are, I can speak with some expertise here because I grew up, as I said, in a 4-generation house. So it's just very different. Their attitudes, their behaviors are very different. And I have over the years, being an employee of them, being a child of them, living in the society that they have created, I have developed a healthy skepticism and fear.
But I also think there's somewhat an intolerance for slowly moving old people. There's something about certain groups of old people that just stop in the middle of walkways.
It's not the slow moving necessarily. I don't have any trouble with folks who just are limited.
Walk people across the street
100%. Oh, I like, help people get their cars and shit. It's just like the inconsiderate.
Yeah.
nature. The fact that like I'm the main character. I am the only person alive who has any problems, and I don't give a shit about anyone around me. I'm going to get mine. I'm going to keep
It's
mine.
interesting because maybe the mental mindset of people who are of certain ages now are really just unhappy.
Well, let me tell you something that my grandfather never did, who was the World War II generation. He never took testosterone supplements and went to the gym in his 80s and hit on teenagers. He just didn't do things like that.
Well, I'm
going to
talk about that too, because
you didn't take supplements to stay young. You accepted that you were growing older. You know, back in my day, folks, old people knew how to be old. Let's make old folks great again.
What's interesting too is, as I've been doing research for this, and I guess I could have figured it out without doing research, but it just became very clear, is the idea of aging and the fear of aging and representation of aging on film, especially in horror movies, is really skewed towards the negative view of feminine aging, because
Absolutely.
they're the ones whose reproductive timeline expires. Yep. So you don't have an Al Pacino and a Robert De Niro being a new father in their 70s. Women can't do that. Biologically, they can't do it.
No, I think Halle Berry is the one who pushed that limit.
One of the things I wanted to talk about there is this hagsploitation, it's called.
I agree. And I know where you're headed with this. And my examples are less about the physicalities of aging for the most part, and more about the grief of losing your sense of self and your place in the world.
Excellent, because mine is mostly about the physicalities and the representation of that.
I know what you mean by hagsploitation, and I do think that there's an element of low-hanging fruit to like showing someone who's wrinkly and being like, a monster.
Yeah, it's categorized as psychobiddy or hagsploitation in cinema.
Psychobiddy?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
In which women, regarded by Hollywood to be past their prime, are portrayed as grotesque and spiral into madness and murder.
So
we
like
see these early
37-year-olds?
Examples of Margot Channing, played by Bette Davis,
whose
career is at risk of being snatched by her younger assistant,
All
Anne
About
Baxter,
Eve?
in All About Eve.
That's such a
from
good
1950.
movie. That is such a good
Whatever
movie.
Happened to Baby Jane?
Another Bette Davis classic.
Mommy Dearest, Faye Dunaway, obviously trying to hold on to.
Speaking of Joan Collins,
the youth of her age, and then it starts to get more contemporary. You know, Death Becomes Her, which is sort of a nod. The substance is a nod to aging actress Meryl Streep drinks a potion which gives her eternal youth.
What an incredibly delightfully dark movie that was. Goldie Hawn.
Yes.
Getting old and, turning into weird face monsters at the end.
But it's been, this is very indicative of Hollywood actresses. And then now we're seeing this hagsploitation play out in different films, and in horror films especially, the recapturing of youth, or where old women become mad or villains.
There's always, anytime a trope is established, it's the same cycle. The trope is established, the trope is overused, people get tired of it, and then you enter my favorite period, which is subversion of the trope.
Yeah.
So you get to reclaim it in sort of a postmodern, parody of the trope.
It's been existing in horror for so long, like Rosemary's Baby. The neighbors are old and aging, and they want the youth to bring the Antichrist.
I mean, I personally kind of like the Cassavetes. I mean, they're super old, but Roman has his ears pierced and he loves Satan. So, who's gerontophobic now?
Every vampire movie.
Oh, true.
Is to capture eternal youth, to live forever.
Side note, is every vampire technically a pedophile? Because, even if you're dating, they did that in Shadows. Remember in the movie when their girlfriends were 85 years old, and he's like, "I'm really robbing the cradle."
Yeah. One of the movies I'm going to talk about, it's interesting because it kind of crosses a little bit of an odd line, and you sort of wonder about what happened before these folks came on screen. I'll get into that in a little bit.
I can't wait. This is intriguing.
But one of the things I did want to talk about is Brian Johnson. You mentioned him. Is
that Mannequin Man?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
He's the man who wants to or thinks he can live forever. He's a centimillionaire, whatever the fuck that means.
Hundreds of millions of dollars is what that means.
He's a tech entrepreneur, and he spent most of the last 3+ years in pursuit of one goal, which is not to die. He spent more than $4 million developing a life extension system called Blueprint. He outsources every decision involving his body to a team of doctors who use data to develop a strict health regime to reduce what Johnson calls his biological age. And it includes him downing 111 pills a day, wearing a baseball cap that emits red light into his scalp, collecting his own stool samples, and sleeping with a tiny jetpack attached to his penis to monitor his nighttime erections.
Did you a jetpack?
Yeah.
Like Ultraman? Like he just...
It's a little jetpack that monitors his erections.
What do you mean a jetpack? Like it has got engines on it and it flies his penis around?
It looks like a little monitor.
That's not a jetpack.
That's what it was called in the article
What
that
the
I read
fuck?
on Time Magazine.
That's not what... When jetpack is like, you got the little... like James Bond thing.
Don't
You
get hung
press
up
buttons
on
and
this.
zoom. I'm
So-
just picturing this man's incredibly white penis.
As we talk
flying
about
around.
the extent
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
that people will
I'm never
go-
gonna die.
Well, it's like, oh, you haven't had an erection. Boo.
Wait, activate.
zoom, zoom. Yeah.
Activate
Control
penis
tower.
jets. Penis jets activating.
It gets that ground control to major dick.
That's what we call a major gentleman right there.
So this is kind of obviously the extreme version of the extent to which somebody will go to prevent aging from naturally occurring.
What a fun life.
But yeah, I mean,
You want to know what I've spent the last 4+ years doing? Not trying not to die, and I have spent considerably less money.
yeah. Well, you have considerably less money.
I also don't outsource my poop. It's
yes,
all,
you do.
all in-house.
What have I been dealing with? Why do you keep
That
making me
is your own
dig through it every day?
personal fetish. I have the letters of request. You sent so many.
One of the films I wanted to talk about is the 1960 film called The Leech Woman, directed
What?
by Edward Dien. Dien.
Great.
It's a film about Dr. Paul Talbot, played by Philip Terry. I mean, these are all, 60s, 50s, and 60s actors, so you're probably not going to
so
recognize
many Philip
them.
Terry posters.
And he's searching for a way to slow the aging process and essentially make himself a wealthy man.
A centimillionaire?
He is a gerontophobiast.
Cool.
Because he loathes aging women, like a lot of older men do. He tells his secretary, "Old women always give me the creeps."
Jeez, man. The
And
fuck?
so one day he meets this elderly black woman played by Estelle Hamsley. She claims she's 152 years old.
Damn.
And she tells him
Black
that
don't
there's
crack.
a substance that prevents aging and death held by her secret tribe in Africa.
Jesus
So
Christ.
Talbot decides to go to the jungle to procure it, of course.
This seems like a totally non-problematic movie at all.
He brings his wife, who is 10 years older than he is, which is interesting
Yeah.
in and of itself,
Okay.
especially with his hatred for old women.
Yeah.
And he's just convinced her to give him a divorce. However, when they get to Africa,
Wait, hold on. I want you to give me a divorce, but first, let's go on this trip to Africa together.
I think it's probably en route.
Well, that's some timing.
But when they get there, they discover that the powder in this magical substance will indeed slow the aging process, but only when it's mixed with the fluid from a man's penile gland. A process that can only occur when the man dies. So, June, his wife,
This
decides
is a real gift in the Magi
she's gonna
situation.
kill him.
Yeah,
She's going to sacrifice him.
Why not?
And it works.
Oh, she gets his ball juice?
The only problem that nobody said at the beginning was this transformation's temporary. So in order to sustain it, you have to continue to get the penile gland from men.
Oh, so you got to keep killing dudes
Penile juice, yeah.
Getting their penis
over
juice?
and over and over again.
That's a lot.
It's amazing. June is a hero.
Again, you're staring so hard at me right now.
I just think it's great.
No, that is some amazing, like, oh, you want a divorce?
So we've been,
that took a turn.
Film, I mean, that's not necessarily a horror film. I don't think it's classified as one, but I think it can be.
More aspirational filmmaking?
Yeah. But way back, in the 50s and 60s, we're talking about aging. And now, even with the most recent 2024's The Substance, we're still talking about aging and anti-aging.
I mean, hags and swamp witches and, old warty ladies on broomsticks. It's always been a thing. Old people are scary. I've been saying it this whole fucking time.
Absolutely. Well, no, I'm not going to agree to that.
Did you ever see?
You trapped me.
Yeah.
Now give me your penile juice.
No! I have so little.
Your gland. I need the gland juice.
The gland is small and
it's
exhausted.
You'd be like, sure, here's my penile juice all over the place. But
anyway, so moving along.
Oh, that's too much.
Moving along.
I just wanted to share that because I thought was amazing.
Oh yeah, no, that is The Leech Woman is I can't believe I haven't seen it. It's definitely on my list now.
But we have a few movies that we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about that represent what either conjures fear or is a good representation of anti-aging movement or fear of aging or trying to escape that thing that's going to come for us all.
Yeah.
The biological age.
I remember being a kid and like old people every once in a while, one of them would say to me like, don't get old, son.
Yeah,
and
don't
I'd be like,
get old. People still
I'm
say
a kid, dude. Like, what are you fucking suggesting?
Well, there's the old adage, our youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah. Or, live fast, die young. Don't trust anyone over 30, that kind of bull. And then all those people, got old and it turns out they were right about that.
Well, age doesn't have to be fearsome, but we're gonna scare the shit out of you.
I want to just briefly talk about the fear of age from a specific generation point of view, like just overall the fear of getting old. I think the reason we are afraid of it, and the reason that basically we're all afraid of it, is it's coming for us. It's when you look at somebody who is so advanced in age that they're physically diminished, that they're hunched over, they're in pain, that they're withered, they don't look like themselves, and maybe they're even cognitively slower. You look at that and it's just right in your face. That is, one day you will be there.
Yeah.
All of your accomplishments, all of your sorrows and your triumphs and your joys and your tragedies will just be reduced to you, shitting your pants on a park bench somewhere, like all hunched over and looking
wow.
weird. So it's just seeing that for anybody it gives you pause. Even when you're with somebody that you love and you care about and they're not scary and they're just a normal person, you still look at them and, you feel the frailty of their hands and the thinness of their skin, and you see them and there's a little bit of you that goes, wow, one day I'm going to have to deal with these things myself. I'm going to be in this position. How will I confront that when that day comes?
But not everybody who is of a certain age is frail or is like hunched over.
Oh, eventually? I mean, listen, I think the world's oldest woman, a Japanese woman, just passed away. She was like 116 years old, and I saw the picture of her, and I'm like, damn, that is the face of somebody who doesn't want to be here anymore. Like, yeah. I think no matter how well you keep yourself past a certain age, you are hurting.
Well, I think part of what that tech bro is trying to do is to live longer and live longer with vitality. I don't think the point is to have eternal life. I think it's more for trying to live better and live longer.
And there's also this weird thing about tech bros where they just have to conquer things. They have to conquer everything.
I mean, it's a strange
everything is
phenomenon.
something to be like subjugated. Death itself, apparently, is something that these
And there is,
saviors of mankind can buy their way out of. So
if you
we'll
have
see.
to go to the extent that he has to go to in order to do this, it's going to be inaccessible for most of the population.
Blood
But
transfusions from your son
yeah, I know.
to stay young. That's where you are in life.
But one of the things I think is important to look at is how older adults are treated
100%.
in the world,
which
by
is
healthcare,
Yes.
by younger people, by systems,
as burdens, as disposable. Their weakness is taken advantage of.
and that adds to the fragility and
It's
the
horrific.
fear.
Well, the thing is, like, we're so afraid of staring at this reflection of our futures that we put them in a home somewhere. That's actually not how my family ever did things. We always had them in our homes and like took care of each other, at least until a certain generation. But
I would say since the 80s and 90s, all families are disparate across country.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
they
it's
inhabit.
almost like
People don't grow up in the same town and neighborhoods that much anymore. So do you have any other things to say about
I mean, I will say
fear
that,
of getting old?
like most fears, the fear of old people and getting old is tragic. It is unnecessary, and it's too bad. I think the people who are afraid of getting old often make very harmful decisions, like unnecessary surgeries and treatments that are harmful and don't they don't look good. They never do.
And it's superficial.
You're
not
but
changing your biological age. You're changing your external cellular age.
Nobody decides to do that to themselves on their own. We don't look in the mirror and hate what we see because we're taught that. We're conditioned to feel that way. And I don't think we have to do that. I think there is right now, I've noticed a little bit of a pushback on the plastic life of people just letting their hair go gray and aging naturally. And that is just always, I think, not only does that aesthetically look better and like less horrifying, but it's healthier to accept where you are in life when you are there and to be okay with being old.
I think more of a focus should be on the internal aging of your organs and your systems as opposed to the external view. But so much anti-aging is put in the external only, when you may look fine on the outside, but it doesn't mean that internally you aren't 70.
And I gotta
say, you may
say,
look 65, but your internal organs are 70.
The from a horror fan's point of view, the physical aspects of aging are great on camera. They're fun and they make for like splattery movies. But what interests me is actually the aging of your self, the capital S, and also your environment. When you age, you undergo so much internal change and loss, and it's such a rich and sad and bittersweet but beautiful time of life. And I find that inner struggle is almost never explored. We just go for the low hanging, like, look at this old fucker and all the wrinkles are scary.
So it's up to each of us to take care of our internal aging.
Yeah.
In the best way we can. Take care of each other as we age.
And take care of your soul.
Take care of your brain. Increase
please.
your brain health as you age.
Get off meta.
And make sure that when you become in the classification of elderly, that you're giving yourself the most, sustainable chance of enjoying your back 15, 20 years
it's
of
like
life.
Our greatest humanist, Jerry Springer, said, take care of yourselves and each other.
I thought that was Maury Povich that said that.
No, it was Jerry Springer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a break after our deep, philosophical discussion on aging.
Have some applesauce and a nap.
And,
these nurses are stealing my medication.
And then we're going to talk about some horror movies, because that's what you're really tuning in for.
Oh, yay. Not what personally scares us. Oh, I do see that the grandkids are calling.
Bye, everyone. We'll be right back. When you're at your wit's end and you need a break, there's only one place you can turn to. The Bad Seed Babysitting Service, of course. With BS, you can cut the BS and get your little nightmare to shut the hell up while you get some much needed fun. While you tear it up in town or just go to a parking lot to scream a while, our specialized sitters can bring your little demon to their knees. Our sitters can make any child behave. The harder they fight, the more our sitters thrive. They love a challenge and have yet to lose. Equipped with their special kit of secret tools, which we can never reveal, the Bad Seed babysitters will put your child down so you don't have to. We do not claim to have any training, certifications, or licensure. Our sitters are not responsible for death or dismemberment. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse the people with murderous tendencies who get into the caregiving trade.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Oh, so many tirades in that last segment.
Mostly yours.
I mean, it's who's to blame, really.
I know.
There's no way of knowing.
We could just listen to it back and we'll know who's to blame.
Like I said, there's really no way of knowing.
Yeah.
So moving on, we are talking about aging, and let's get into some, I don't know, genre examples that aren't just my own personal fears.
Yeah. Go for it.
Oh, me first? Hello. Listen, I'm going to talk about a couple of movies here. And the first one I'm going to talk about is, I think, in my opinion, the scariest that I'm recommending. It's 2014's The Taking of Deborah Logan, which, first off, great title.
Yeah.
First, it was the directorial debut of Adam Robitel, who has gone on to direct the Escape Room series.
Oh.
Which I think you've seen.
I have seen those. I like that kind of movie, believe it or not. They're not the greatest, but
I do believe it.
They're like video games.
That's fine. Listen, not everything has to be the greatest. Except me. So this movie is a lot different than the Escape Room movies. It's first off, it's a hard R-rated movie. It's found footage, and it is about a documentary crew making a movie about a woman named, Deborah Logan, played by Jill Taylor, in a really amazing performance. She's been on Days of Our Lives forever, I think. She has an aggressive form of Alzheimer's. And this documentary crew is making a film about her and Alzheimer's. She lives with her adult daughter, Sarah, played by the incredible Anne Ramsey, who was in last year's very, very good, or 2 years ago, Brooklyn 4-5. So anyway, as you can imagine, they start this documentary, and then the old lady's behavior gets weird. She starts, staring off into things, and then getting really violent and aggressive and weird, and waving a knife around, and then she starts, speaking French, even though she doesn't speak French. And the movie takes a really weird turn into ancient voodoo French Creole rituals and sacrificing virgins and possession. And it has a really great ending that's a bit misleading. But this movie kicks off very quickly. By the halfway point, you're just barely getting into all the voodoo stuff. It's a fast-paced movie. And I will say, having Anne Ramsey and Jill Taylor anchor this movie really elevates it above a lot of found footage. In my opinion, a lot of found footage movies, you're dealing with kind of new actors. And these two veterans really elevate this movie. There's a lot of great effects. It's very gnarly. There's a lot of barfing up worms and type stuff. But it's legit a terrifying movie. And this specifically deals with, I think, the fear, in Alzheimer's or dementia or just, getting older and slowing down in your loss of self, in people attributing behavior to you that maybe you're not fully aware of your personality change. And then, because Deborah Logan has these moments where she's a normal lady and she's like, what's happening to me? And it's kind of heartbreaking.
And the frightening unreliability of Alzheimer's.
Yes. Anybody who's been around someone with Alzheimer's, that there are moments where they are, quote unquote themselves again, but you can't predict those. They just happen. You spend enough time with the person, you'll have those moments.
And there's a lot of regressive moments with somebody who has dementia or Alzheimer's.
There are other times when sometimes the person's personality can become very shocking or aggressive or mean. And you're like, okay, I gotta just pretend this isn't, personal. It's the idea, I think, that as we get older and we start to, our memory softens, or maybe we do suffer from a degenerative disease, that we lose our sense of self and we become someone else, and we are held responsible for actions that, we're not at the controls for. It's terrifying. And this takes it quite literally into being, it's a demon. Poor Deborah Logan doesn't really have Alzheimer's. She just has a demon inside her. So anyway, I really recommend this movie. It's very scary. It's a good, fast-paced movie with, not a lot of fat on it. It gets right to it.
It really does show the very quick decline, though.
Yes. Well, Deborah Logan is pretty infirmed when they meet her, but you do get the sense of her being a complete person before she gets into vomiting dirt. It's also wild. I appreciate when a movie isn't afraid to go totally crazy, and this does. It's a bonkers movie, but it's also very scary. Taking of Deborah Logan. Why
don't we talk about our mutual recommendation?
We do have a mutual, folks.
We do, so we can go into that next, which is the film Relic.
2020's Relic, an Australian film,
and it's starring Emily Mortimer, who's amazing.
You might know her from everything.
Yeah. And her daughter in the film, played by Bella Heathcote. And they go and move in with Emily Mortimer's character's Kay, her mother, and Sam, her daughter's grandmother, Edna, played by Robin Nevin.
Robin Nevin. Now, this movie, when they get there, these three generations of women, the mom and granddaughter go to the grandmother's house because she's gone missing.
Yes.
When they arrive, she's not there, but the neighbor, the little kid neighbor, tells some kind of creepy stories. They are alarmed. They find some things, and the whole place has an infestation of black mold.
Yeah, and it's really it's kind of this little remote place where her mother has lived and has always stayed, kind of like a recluse.
Yeah, and it's oppressively dark and in the woods. There are it's very overgrown.
Yes. And they start to see some strange kind of confusing situations in the house, there's some kind of candle.
Well, there's the
rack of candles,
the weird labyrinth underneath the house.
Yeah, there's
the corridors and shit.
Flesh drying meats.
Yes. And then, grandma comes home without shoes on.
Yeah.
After a few days.
But what the point of this, I think, first instance or first few half hour of the laying of the groundwork is watching something decay.
Yes. Well, that's what this movie is about. And also inherited, diseases or curses or just the inevitability of losing everything.
And watching a parent die.
That is the 100% of this movie, is watching a loved one wither and rot and
decay.
Waste away. Yeah, so in front of you.
She gets to this house that has already started decaying and becoming consumed back into the woods.
And this mold that's growing. And it's very
invasive.
The way the movie is shot is very cloying and makes you feel like this. It's an oppressive environment, and
it's really unnerving and also dread. You feel a sense of dread because you don't quite know.
It's a slow burn of a movie for sure.
It is.
I love this movie. It is less scary than The Taking of Deborah Logan and more heartbreaking.
What's interesting, similarly to The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is as this black mold really starts to become more of an infestation, the mom starts to become more violent and she more confused.
Develops a growing black spot on her chest.
Yes.
That is looks a lot like the mold.
It's almost, I mean, it's like a representation of ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Pretty much, yeah. So, not to get into everything, this movie has a beautiful, poignant, and wrenching ending that I absolutely loved. The movie is contemplative and it's slow moving, and there are horrific moments to it, but it's not overly scary, in my opinion.
Aging is irreversible is the point of, I think, part of what's happening. Like,
and it's
this
also
is always going to happen.
Extremely important that there are 3 generations of these women, and none of them. It's just it's these kinds of things. I mean, this all begins with the story of the great grandfather,
right?
So this is something that has been in the family for as long as they know. And it will continue on in the family. And the ending, I don't want to give it away. It's just...
Don't. It just came out.
It's quite shocking. And it's really...
5 years ago.
It's really leaves me... I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah. And just watch it and see how it, touches on your emotions, especially if you've had any kind of involvement in elder care.
Yes.
And especially Emily Mortimer and her lack of empathy.
Until a point.
Yeah. It's interesting how her relationship with this mother of hers has hardened her.
Yeah.
And it's really her own daughter that kind of helps her become a little bit more soft.
There's this movie, more than the others on our list, focuses on the elderly and the aging is a part of this, a central part of the movie, but the focus is really on the people who take care of them,
right?
And what it does to the next generation and the generation after that, these sorts of lingering wasting diseases, and how it doesn't just affect that one person. And also there's a beautiful acceptance in this movie of people the way they are, that is really hard to come to, but well earned and very compassionate.
Yes,
it's a lovely movie, and it's also gross and kind of scary.
Yeah, it's a horror movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's depressing.
It's the only way I can get those feels in.
Dread-inducing and sad and
full
hard
of mold.
To watch. Yeah,
and also skin peeling.
But it's not at all hopeful or uplifting.
I thought actually it was a little bit.
Yeah.
Agree
to disagree.
Yeah. Well, that brings me
that's Relic
into my last one.
Why don't you let me go, because we shared that and I haven't done one on my own yet.
I guess.
Okay. I'm going to talk a split conversation about
the movie Split.
Speaking of 2021's M. Night Shyamalan's film Old. So the story of this, it was very compelling to me. I think M. Night Shyamalan is a pretty good director. The problem is that he is not a very good screenwriter.
No.
And when looking
his dialogue
into this film,
is so painful to get through.
Looking into this film, I found that Old is an adaptation of a graphic novel called Sandcastle by Pierre Oscar Levy and Frederick Peters. And it's a body horror thriller that takes place on a remote cliffside beach where visitors arrive for, a fun day, and it changes when they find a dead body in the water. So this is Sandcastle I'm talking about. And it's similar to how Old is laid out a little bit. They begin to rapidly age since they arrived at the beach, and they've discovered there's nowhere to escape to. So it's really an aging body horror graphic novel of how aging happens no matter what you do. And this particular place where they are, this particular beach, has these strange properties that it just accelerates the aging process every 7 years, every hour that goes by. So if you end up on this beach and you're already in your 60s or 70s, then you will not last many hours. If you're a child, then you will go through the stages of development extremely quickly. So cut to the film Old, of where Shyamalan adapted this graphic novel into. And the Shyamalan twist of this film is that everybody that is brought to this particular beach, they're at this fancy resort. They're told by the manager of the resort that this secretive beach exists and they should really go see it.
Oh, yeah, definitely go.
They're brought to the beach by M. Night Shyamalan because he puts himself in all his films.
He loves it.
Or
his daughters.
He stays on the cliff to observe their behavior the whole time they're there. And they start to rapidly age. Everybody there on the beach has some kind of terminal or significant illness, except for the children. There are a couple children, and the way they age is really shocking to their parents.
And the viewer.
So what we find out at the end of the film, again, the Shyamalan twist, is that behind this whole conceit...
Spoiler.
It's okay.
Spoiler.
I don't mind spoiling it.
Spoiler.
Yeah. Turn it off if you don't want to hear the ending of this movie. Read the graphic novel, though. Is that this hotel resort has a team of medical scientists who study disease, and they bring these specific people with diseases to the island. They make them a specialty cocktail when they arrive, but it's an experimental drug. And then they see how they either deal with, because they advance the age by 7 years every hour. They see how the experimental drug handles the disease. One example is this woman had epilepsy. They gave her her cocktail. She's on the beach, and for 21 years, so 3 hours, she did not have one seizure. So they claim that they have found the cure to epilepsy. And then they go out and sell these pharmaceutical products. Nobody's ever gotten off the island.
Yeah.
Because it's really not about survival.
No.
It's about live test subjects being
that's like
experimented on.
It's like with the Tuskegee experiments when they would give people placebos for syphilis medication because they just wanted to watch the progression of the disease.
Two aspects of this film that were really enticing to me the most were the young children when they really just wanted to be older.
Rude.
From the beginning of the film, one of the young kids is watching. She's like in between ages. She's too old to hang out with the young kids playing, like making sandcastles, and she's too young to hang out with the kids playing beach volleyball.
Sandcastles.
So she wants to be older. She wants to be able to hang out with the big kids. So it's that kind of desire to age up quickly.
Yeah, when you're young, you want to be older. When you're older, you want to be younger. It's the fucking hilarity of human existence.
And then as these kids age up, right, they're never going to have memories. They're never going to get their first kiss or anything like that. Yeah. Anyway, the other aspect that was
So are they childish but in teenage bodies?
No, their brain develops too strangely.
Oh. So they act like teenagers? They don't act like little kids in big bodies?
They ended up being 50 at the end.
Yeah.
So they don't act like teenagers. They act like mature adults.
Weird.
Yeah.
How do they emotionally develop in that time? Oh, we're getting into the Shyamalan of it.
Yeah. There wasn't an exposition dump for that.
It would have made so much more sense if they were in adult bodies, but they still had the minds of a child.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
You would think. So one of the other aspects that was very interesting to me was one of the women had extreme plastic surgery. She didn't really eat much. She was very thin, very
She had the Mar-a-Lago face?
Yeah. And so her rapid aging and her husband commenting on you better put some makeup on.
Yikes.
Yes, he was paranoid schizophrenic. So again, that also played out
not fun.
In a very scary and violent way, which is the horror of it all.
Yeah, when you have a decade worth of freakouts at once.
She didn't want anyone to look at her. So anyway, she didn't want anyone to look at her as she got older and older, and it was very grotesque. And
same.
Yeah, and like heartbreaking, and you never really knew how old she was. But anyway, you watch these people age rapidly, and it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie, so a lot of it doesn't make sense, and a lot of it was convenient. So
Yeah.
go back to the source material.
Well,
Because
the twist in this movie, and again, spoiler, is that they were all allergic to water. The beach was
not
off
true.
the side of the Jersey Turnpike the whole time.
That's not true.
One of them was dead.
Okay, go back to the source material, Sandcastle, graphic novel.
The schizophrenic guy was a cross-dresser.
It will really kind of walk you through the aging body horror trope, and kind of focus on the flaws of each of these individuals and as they age and what happens. And the ending isn't hopeful.
No,
so
but the post-credit scene where Josh Hartnett comes out and says, "Looks like they
don't
fell into
listen to
my
anything
trap,"
my co-host is saying.
and then
Old came out
Lady
during
Raven
the
does the
COVID-19
soundtrack.
pandemic, so I think that that had a little bit of a play in the
yeah,
experimental drug piece. Maybe he added that in the end.
Or
It felt very convenient to end the film that way.
a lot of his movies do.
I just
want to
give a little conversation to M. Night right now. Listen, we're not as dumb as you think we are.
Not
You
even
do
close.
not have to explain every decision that you make. Just be a little subtle about it. You don't have to reveal everything that happened. You could have had these people go to the beach, go get old, and maybe someone lives and escapes, and then you don't have to tell anybody why. You don't have to have a secret underground lair.
So, just a quick aside to the aside. M. Night, it's Richard. So I know that Laura just said a bunch of stuff to you, but I'd like to say that you don't actually have to have a twist at the end. You can just do a solid movie from start to finish, and then we'll just be happy. You don't have to like pull the rug out. You did it once or twice really well, but you feel like you have this pressure to do it all the time.
I kept saying while I was watching
sorry,
it, this
I'm
is a really great idea, and it wasn't even your idea.
Let's just have a remake where someone who's good at this does it.
Yeah, and like, let's not.
We
nail
try
it-
to stay positive
nail it
here at Terror in
into the
Tandem,
ground.
but come on. I think
But anyway, that is a recommendation to read the source material for the film
Sandcastle.
or Old
Yeah.
Sandcastle.
Came out in 2010, and it's been translated into English.
Yeah.
So it's available.
It's about 110 pages, graphic novel. You can pick it up and read it in one sitting.
Yeah. Well, getting old is terrifying, and doing it all at once on a beach with your mom is worse.
What's your last?
My last one is the beginning of the now acclaimed X trilogy, and that is 2022's X, from director Ty West. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't really sold on Ty West before this movie. I liked House of the Devil, the atmosphere, and for the Tom Noonan of it all, but it was like a little slow, even though I'm a big slow burn fan. And then The Innkeepers was like a slog. It just was. I kind of gave up on him after that, but X was amazing. I loved this movie, and I'm a big fan of Pearl, and I haven't seen Maxine yet, but that's on the list. So anyway, X fits into my old list because Mia Goth plays two characters in this. She plays the very young and horned up Maxine Minx, but she also plays the
very old
and horned up Pearl. This movie definitely plays a lot into the look at my hideous old body. You know, she's got like a lot of prosthetics and hangy tits. But what fascinates me about this is that unlike a lot of these other movies, unlike actually all of these other movies, it really addresses geriatric sexuality, which is still a thing. You know, long past your body failing you, your mind still goes, and you may still have desires and hang-ups, as Pearl does. Now, Pearl's big thing is she, especially if you've seen Pearl, you realize she's always been nuts, but she's always been someone who dreamt of a bigger life that she never got and feels a tremendous amount of resentment and murderous rage about that. So in this movie, she plays as Pearl, like a nonagenarian crazy woman who they rent out their ranch to travelers, and this group is a group of aspiring porno filmmakers and stars. Mm-hmm. So along with Kid Cudi and Brittany Snow, they fuck each other
And
a
Jenna
bunch.
Ortega.
And Jenna Ortega. She I think she does a scene. She does do a scene. But anyway, they all bang each other, and Pearl gets really horned up about it, and she's also like enraged by the sight of these young people in their young bodies, able to do what she isn't, and able to have these lives that she always felt like she should have, even
She's,
though
like,
their lives isn't
lustful
great. Yeah,
about it.
she's very envious. She's like angry, and she takes out horrible, vengeance on them. But it's a lot of stuff like, don't look at me and all of that. And then when she and her also very old husband finally do fuck towards the end of the movie, it kills him because he's 100. So,
and that's a lot of pent up sexual, they
haven't done it in a long time. It's a fascinating movie. Look, it's a really awesome slasher movie. It's very well shot. It's not nearly as much of a slow burn as his other movies, but it's still a well paced and methodical film. There are some scenes in it that are just so burned into my brain at this point. It's a fantastic movie, but it's
very grindy and grindhousey.
Oh yeah, it's really like 70s sweaty Texas Chainsaw style.
Yeah.
So
it looks like it takes place on the Texas Chainsaw set.
Very much inspired by that era, my favorite era. So really, really spoke to me this movie. But the exploration of the old, the very extremely old in this movie as still being sexual beings who possess desires and envies and can have their feelings hurt and can be ashamed. It was oddly compassionate in a way. I mean, they're maniacs and they butcher a whole room full of young people, but there are moments in this movie where you kind of feel bad for Pearl. It's pathetic, and it's, never being comfortable in your own life. Even though when you see Pearl, she's she's Mia Goth. I mean, she's pretty. Like, there's no reason for her to feel this way. She's also like a homicidal monster and maniac, and it's awesome. Go see Pearl too. But listen, you want to see a couple horned up old people with like tons of prosthetics on, and you could also see Kid Cudi's massive penis. That's in this movie. I feel like that should have gotten its own billing, like starring Kid Cudi. Also starring Kid Cudi's penis. Number one on the call sheet.
It's his old man Cudi.
Yeah. So X is a departure from the other movies that we've done, I think, which are more looking into the physicality and the body horror aspect of growing old, and also the loss of like memory. And this is really just, I don't want to be old. I still want to be young.
And if I can't be young, then I'm going to kill the youth. Basically,
yeah. That's what she does, is like, if I can't be young and pretty and reamed out, then no one can. Yeah. So I love X. I can't wait to see Maxine. It's just, I've been really busy. Listen, I'm a popular guy.
Nobody cares. So will you wrap up?
X.
My last is something I've already talked about a lot, but it's really appropriate for this episode, which is The Substance.
Oh, god damn.
And
congratulations to me, Morin. I know you're listening. I'm sorry what I said about... Listen, Bruce Willis was great in The Sixth Sense, and that's one of M. Night's best movies, and Unbreakable.
I know that we've talked about The Substance probably every episode of the last 5 episodes.
And we'll continue to do so on Terra in Tandem Presents a Substance podcast.
But just a reminder that basically this film is about a celebrity aerobics instructor named Elizabeth, played by Demi Moore, who just turned 50 and deemed...
Wait, what? She's only 50 in this movie?
Yeah.
Demi Moore is a bit older than that, isn't she?
Not much.
Huh.
Maybe she's 60. I don't know.
I mean,
62?
It sucks that people think 50 is like super old.
Anyway, she's deemed too wrinkled for television by executives, and she's told that she's going to be ousted from her daytime slot that she's been in for decades.
Rude.
For a younger, prettier version. This is when she gets kind of solicited by and engaged in the dark underworld of purchasing the substance, which is
a
green
better you
serum from a shady, unknown medical company that promises a younger, more beautiful version of yourself. And her replacement is Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, and she comes out of her spine and lives 7 days while Demi is passed out, kind of
look, everybody knows what this movie
dead
is
shell, and then they swap. Anyway, one of the biggest takeaways and why this is so significant in the aging subgenre for horror is manyfold. One aspect is the external pressures that your job or being in the public eye places on, especially a female actress or a public persona, to do something drastic in order to stay relevant, of which this character does the most drastic. The other thing is all the things that you deprive yourself of throughout your life in order to maintain the ideal, the beauty ideal. So starve yourself, get Botox injections, use all of the right serums,
all the pills that make you poop a lot,
work out all the time, you know, all the things that go into
yourself.
That aesthetic that's placed on others. So not necessarily placed on you, but you've bought into it so deeply that, and it's not skin deeply. It's so
ingrained.
Deeply
Yeah.
that it's the way that you live. And then the kind of the last aging part is when youth steps in, and this is kind of like where the separation of you do this for 7 days, Margaret Qualley's character takes control for 7 days. She starts to abuse the privilege of the body. She doesn't understand that youth is fleeting. Demi Moore's character already knows that. So when she's living her 7 days, she is trying to do it correctly at the beginning. But once Margaret Qualley sort of just is living her life as a young person, Demi Moore is like, hell no, now I'm going to make you kind of suffer because I'm going to be miserable because I can't actually be out in the world because nobody wants me out in the world. And so she really loses her identity. She loses her individuality because the youth version of herself has taken full control of her space in the world. And so she's not relevant. So that happens often. The older people get is their relevancy seems to fade away. Like they're forgotten about. Nobody really checks on her from her old life.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, oh, come to this party. The only person that's engaging with her at all is somebody she knew from when she was young.
Oh yeah, that's sad. I mean, not to bring anybody down, but I didn't tell you about this, but I substanced myself.
Oh no.
And it was actually my version was just Danny DeVito, but like young from like his Taxi days.
Which it was always old.
He was still bald, and yeah, I mean, it was depressing. I had to incinerate little Danny.
But it's very much, a mirror reflection, a visual, like there's a billboard up. It's like all superficial, all other people's eyes on you all times, your eyes on you at all times.
Commoditizing, flesh.
No, she can't even retire and travel and relax and be peaceful.
Or eat, a chicken wing without it coming out of your younger self's belly button.
So I just wanted, there's so much there. It's so much, so deep. You can look into it for days and days, but I would be a stupid jerk face if I didn't bring this up for our aging episode.
The youth, is dismissive of the old in this movie, and the old clings to everything, and
they really do.
Won't let the youth do anything, and it's that's both sides pretty true. Mm-hmm. But it's ultimately a movie of just about how cruel we are to ourselves.
Yes. And again, the superficiality of it all. Yeah. Where it's interesting that the actual product is called the substance when we're never exploring the substantive part of these people's character.
Yeah.
It's only their superficial, what they can offer superficially.
It's also like
not of substance.
Not hard to believe that if this were invented, people would totally inject themselves with it. I mean, the shit people do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Getting like blood injected into their face and, botulism in your face at a party.
It's just a violent aspect of beauty.
Anyway, I got to go squeeze out this young goat and bathe in it so I don't end up like one of our movies.
Don't listen to him, everybody and anybody. Just don't. The substance.
The substance, everyone. Well, my gosh.
I feel older
I
just
do.
recording
I
this
feel
episode.
like 10 years older just doing this whole fucking thing.
But there's lots of movies that explore aging in a monstrous way. It really is a focus on female aging. And
I mean, no shit.
the
All of
grotesquerie
my
of
movies
that.
were about that.
I know. And so just be mindful of that when you're watching these films and think about, how people are represented by the way they look, and think about what we said in the first portion of the philosophical conversation of wisdom and feeding your mind and making sure that you stay well inside and not just out.
Man. Well, yeah, that's a lot to think about. I fully confess, cop to, and do not apologize for my abject terror of old people. I think it's healthy and has kept me safe.
Gentrophobia, as I live and breathe.
For now.
So we'll check in with you a week later, next week, when we're all a week older.
Oh, sounds good. Bye, everyone. Oh.
Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Hispanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're